Welcome to the Sales Masters Roundtable, hosted by Shawn Casemores.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Sales Masters Roundtable. And today we have the pleasure of having Shannon Hall join us from Dustbane. Shannon, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think sales leadership is so exciting and something that we really need to continue to invest and develop in.
Well, and it is, you and I were speaking off camera here before we got started. And I said that one of the challenges is, it seems like a very isolated position in many cases. As a sales leader, you're working with your team, you're working with senior leaders, but it's rare you get a lot of interaction with other sales leaders. So appreciate you sharing with our audience here all that you've learned and bringing insights to them. So again, thanks for your time. What I typically will do is just jump right into the questions. And the first one is a little bit about how you first got into sales. What was your first job in sales? And what did you really enjoy about it that made you want to continue?
So if you were to ask my parents what my first job in sales was, they would say it's when I sold my kindergarten teacher a camper. I don't think that was truly my first job. My first job was when I was a teenager selling ice cream out of a Dickie D cart at the museum. And I'm sure that everybody's had that experience. One thing that I found is I'm not an athlete. So it was great for me to find the location where there was enough people to create the revenue stream that I needed, but not to have the exertion of driving this cart around and trying to find those customers. But boy, when they came to me, I wanted to make sure that I capitalized on every single opportunity and every dollar that we could get. So I think what I really loved about that was the human connection. As I fast forward into my professional career, then I moved into selling restaurant supplies and equipment. It came from my background in hospitality. And what a journey it was to go from an inside sales role to an outside sales role, doing business development, and having then to work with a team to execute on your strategies. It was a great learning experience, and I think everyone should try it.
Wow. Well, and I'm just recalling the Dickie D's ice cream. Those were heavy to pedal, especially up a hill. So good for you for finding a location where everybody was hanging around. You didn't have to put too much effort into getting there.
I just had to make sure the truck was always full.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had a lot of experience, obviously, in restaurant supplies, in inside sales, outside sales, business development. What made you want to transition into a sales leadership role?
It's always been my passion. I love coaching. I love training. I love development, and I love to see people succeed. So taking all of those aspects and building that on my passion for sales, I think is probably really what started to make me want to gravitate towards a sales leadership role. When I was at Granger, it was interesting. The leadership team had to make a decision as to whether or not I was going to be a fit to move into a sales leadership role. And I'll never forget our president at the time saying to me, I'm not sure that you can move from being an individual contributor into that sales leadership role, considering how dominant I had always been as an independent or an individual contributor. So I think looking at that, it really made me reflect on, one, what was the aura I was giving off to people about the type of person that I was, and what would lead them to feel that I couldn't be a sales leader, or maybe I shouldn't be. And so often you see that transition from a high performer moving into a sales leadership role, but they're not designed for that. How do you find someone that can be a hybrid and go both ways? It took a lot of learning. It took a lot of development, but I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to jump on this journey.
So you share an interesting point, but it's so common is that, a lot of high performing sales people are often tapped on the shoulder to lead the team, but that just because that's the case, it doesn't mean that just because you can contribute yourself and drive for results yourself doesn't mean you can help others to achieve the same. So that distinction is important. And I wish more presidents such as the one you had in that job were actually thinking that through. And being a little more conscious of that, because I tell clients, if you hire your top sales performer to be the sales leader, now you've got somebody that maybe can or can't lead. You don't really know till you try, but you've for sure lost your top sales performer. So
Absolutely.
it can be a double whammy. Tell us a little bit about your role today, the size of team you have, what you focus on in your role.
So I have a unique role here at Dustbane. I'm the executive vice president of sales and marketing. So I have sales, marketing, customer experience, all reporting up to me. So my role has changed quite a bit from when I started here and was brought into the organization to be the vice president of sales, leading just the sales team, and then really broadening my reach. So I've had the opportunity to promote within and have one of my team members that was a regional sales manager move into that national sales manager role and now start doing the day-to-day with the sales team and helping them develop. When I look at my role, it's really looking at the strategy and what are we doing from a growth perspective? How's that going to play into what the team is doing on a day-to-day basis? But more importantly, what does that 5-year outlook look like? And how does that really tie sales and marketing together versus sales and marketing, which typically you see that's combative. And we really want to make sure that it's cohesive and really blended together. And then taking customer service and turning that really into a customer experience. How do we get there and transition from one aspect of what we may have believed was optimal into what is the market need as we go forward? So interesting times. I still spend a lot of time in the field with the team, with our distribution partners, and with our probably our largest customers or potential largest customers.
So but a few of the points you raised, I think are interesting. So you set a 5-year plan essentially then for sales and marketing, and do you review that annually or just every 5 years or?
Yeah, it's an annual review. So I believe that your plan is probably going to change quarterly. So when I look at the team and our overall plan, they're going to have an annual key account plan that they should be looking at quarterly. I also will have a key account plan that I'm looking at quarterly to make sure that we are on track for what that 5-year goal is and what are some of those milestones that we need to start setting now to ensure that we are going to hit that goal within 5 years, hopefully sooner.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then also you mentioned how at your current employer, they've brought together marketing with sales and customer experience, essentially, which makes so much sense because at the end of the day, you're the roles or focus may be slightly different, but the end goal is to serve customers, right?
Absolutely.
So I think
and you
that
need
makes
to be moving in the same direction. And often it's the opposite to that.
Yeah, it is. So I think do you think more companies should consider mixing or bringing together? Because again, every company is different, but I find more often than not, marketing is a separate entity from sales. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
I think it just depends on the size of the organization as well. And then the type of leadership style that you have, as well as the expertise that you may have on your team and how you can really coordinate and communicate. I think when I look at large global organizations, it just wouldn't be feasible to do that. When you look at smaller and mid-sized organizations, it's absolutely feasible and probably imperative that you do that to keep your message on point.
So, Shannon, what is one of the biggest challenges that you find your sales team is facing today in this market, in this economy?
It's changing times. And I think when we think about what is happening as a Canadian manufacturer, we're not necessarily in a terrible position as folks today are looking for made in Canada solutions. Where I find the biggest challenge, though, is really in that follow-up piece. When we think about that instant gratification that we've all become accustomed to, it is really hard from a lead perspective. When leads come in, customers are expecting you to answer within seconds or minutes. If you're an outside seller and that sales qualified lead comes to you, you may be on the road and not able to turn that around as quickly as customers are looking for. So I think one of the changes that we're going to see is AI is really going to help support in that marketing aspect and sales and lead generation aspects. I'm excited to see that, but it's certainly a challenge. And keeping up with customer demands, CRM, everything that you have to do in a day is really daunting for sales teams with large territories and getting back out in the field and traveling and doing everything that they need to do to keep business flowing at the rate that you want it to.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Well, and there is, regardless of where you're located or what you sell, these are definitely changing times and
Absolutely.
a lot of challenges to be overcome. How do you keep your sales team focused and pursuing their goals, whether they tie to the 5-year plan that you have or just individual goals?
So we think there's a couple of things. One, I believe in motivation, and what motivates your team is critically important. I don't think sales leaders spend enough time determining what actually motivates their individual team members versus an overall motivation. So
Yeah.
things like making sure that that recognition is in place, but ensuring that the recognition is appropriate for that individual. So to give you an example, if I have an individual that's really intrinsically motivated,
Yeah.
if I do a public shout out to them,
Yeah.
they don't appreciate that. That's not rewarding to them. So, learning that about your team and what really does create that recognition and reward for them, I think is critically important. It helps them stay focused, but it also helps them stay positive. Also, using, to my earlier point, those key account plans, pipelines. But I think that one-to-one conversation is probably the most important element that gets missed. So, what is happening? That sidebar conversation that you have to have with your team to make sure that they understand where's the company going? What are some of the strategies that we are putting in place? And how do they actually fit in that strategy, both short term and long term?
Yeah. Um, So, and one thing you mentioned there, I think is I wanted to follow up on. So, how often do you have those one-to-ones? Are they formal? Are they informal? Is it a combination?
Definitely a combination. It's hard to pin people down. So with the way that I changed the structure of our sales team, now my national sales manager Tim is responsible for doing all one-to-ones. What ends up happening though is you feel like you're missing out. That FOMO really does kick in as to what is happening in the marketplace and how are you connecting with your individuals. So I will still have a regular touch point with my team. It's usually my drive in the morning. I've got my Eastern Canada team that's in a different time zone. Then my drive home, the Western team, is when I'm connecting with them. So we do something else that's more formal in the way of success calls and making sure that that's formalized, that the rest of the leadership team is really in tune with what's happening in the marketplace, the challenges that we might be facing, and obstacles we need to overcome as well.
Right. So, what's something that you wish you knew as a sales leader when you first became a sales leader? You wish that somebody had told you this that would have really been helpful to you.
So much. I think there's so many different things, but I think it probably does go back to really tailoring your leadership style to
Hmm.
the individuals on your team is probably what's most important, and really understanding what is going to happen with that person long term. So,
Yeah.
what I mean by that is what are their individual goals, both personally and professionally, and making sure that all of your conversations are not focused solely on the professional goals. When I think about when we do our reviews, it's a great example of where people identify their personal goals and objectives so that when we're doing the reviews throughout the year, we can talk about how are you meeting those? Are you getting everything that you need not only from yourself personally, but from the organization, and how can I best support and help you? And giving people the opportunity to step up and really lead, I think is also really, really important for helping build that professional and their own goals.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah. So, it to me it stands out that your focuses seem to be a heavily the areas that you focus on most seem to be that plan and all the supporting elements of that plan, achieving the plan, but also then the people right down to the individual level,
Absolutely.
which is I agree with you. It's the ingredients to success because what motivates one person may be very different than somebody else. One person may want your job in 5 years. Somebody else may just want to stick with what they're doing and not do anything else. So knowing that and allows you or to enable them to get the most success for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. So, what's the biggest if you fast forward? So think about the next 3 to 5 years. What do you think is the biggest challenge your sales team will face or may face in the coming years?
I think it's a changing sales professional. What you do today is not going to be the sales professional of the future. When you think about how AI is impacting us in just such a short period of time. Really, who would have ever known what ChatGPT was 24 months ago?
Yeah.
They really didn't. So the addition of agents that can support you is going to be very helpful. But as a sales professional, the day of the order taker is long gone. You really do need to be able to do something different for your customers. But I think qualifying those customers that are unique and really need the additional value and support that you bring is going to be such a critical piece in the junction, because all that follow-up can be automated. The lead generation can be automated. There's so much that can be done without a sales professional being involved. What are those aspects of the job that can't be done through automation today?
Yeah. Definitely technology is changing the game. And I find it's interesting. You could look at, a single sales team, and you might have, actually, I'll give you an example. So I worked with a sales team a little while ago. One gentleman used AI for everything. It helped him write his email scripts. It helped him write his presentation. Oh, maybe almost too much, but he used it effectively to some degree. And yet somebody in the same team was in the very opposite end of the spectrum, kind of old school. They still wanted to meet with people in person. And the funny thing was, the person with the old school approach, even though they might be selling to different generations, was having more success.
Yeah.
And what I said, well, I wonder if we fast forward in 3 to 5 years, if that'll still be the case, because buyers are also younger, more adept with technology, more inclined to want to use technology. So it is interesting times, to say the least.
It really is. And I think when we look at what's happening, to try and retain individuals is harder and harder. But to recruit sales professionals is even more difficult. I have the opportunity to work with some of the local colleges and universities and speak in their sales and marketing programs. It's so great. But when I ask the question, how many individuals in this room are thinking about a sales career? There's not a lot of them in a sales and marketing program where their hand is going up. They think that what they want to do is digital marketing.
Yeah.
And often the perception of digital marketing is, I want to do social media. Ooh, that's going to be an ever-changing goalpost. And it's hard to attract sales talent at the age that we need them to start to see that this is a viable career. It is a professional career. And we are always going to need people in sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first off, thank you so much, Shannon, for all that you've contributed here today. If somebody wants to connect with you, follow up with you, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
So LinkedIn is probably the number one platform to find me. I believe that's how we originally met as well. Shawn is really through LinkedIn. Absolutely reach out to me there, or you can reach out to me at Dustbane. My email is on our website.
Yeah, excellent. Well, listen, I really appreciate, again, your time and everything you've shared. Any final closing comments or thoughts that you want to share with everybody?
I think sales is the greatest profession in the world, and anyone that is thinking about it should absolutely reach out, connect with people like yourself or myself, and get some perspective on what that career could look like for you. I think it's unbelievable and such a missed opportunity for so many folks.
Yeah, I agree. Well, again, thanks again, Shannon. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Take care.